You're listening to the Unwritable Rant podcast with your host and bourbon-soaked storyteller, Juliette Miranda.
Hey there, y'all. I'm Juliette Miranda, and welcome to episode 233 of the Unwritable Rant podcast. I'm going to put my usual bourbon-soaked stories on hold so that I can bring you my conversation with lead singer of the Tubes, Fee Waybill. Now, Fee has a new album out right now called Fee Waybill Rides Again, and y'all, I gotta tell you, this is a seriously kick-ass rock album. It was actually 14 years in the making. And the end result sounds so current and so modern, it's incredible. And get this, it was produced by Richard Marx, who even co-wrote a bunch of the songs. So Fee talks a lot about his relationship with Richard Marx, he talks about making the album, but he also gets into his history with the Tubes. He talks about his relationship with producer David Foster, working on the movie Xanadu. And here's a little bit of trivia for y'all. Fee Waybill was one of the 3 most important people in the world in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. That is how cool this guy is. And you know, something kind of funny happened during this interview. Fee was in the middle of a story, and out of nowhere, 3 fighter jets decided to fly over our cute little house here in the French Quarter and cause all sorts of ruckus. Y'all have no idea. It was mortifying. I mean, it was so loud. Even Fee heard it over our internet connection. Thankfully, he is a pro and a very understanding guy, but y'all, these are some of the things that you just got to contend with when you do interviews. Now, this conversation originally ran on the Virtual Happy Hour YouTube show. It is a show that I host with my guy, David the producer, and we have been having so much fun having some of our crazy musician friends on and actor friends and comedians. So if you'd like to see the video of this interview, find the David the Producer channel on YouTube. There's all sorts of cool things in there that you're going to totally dig. As for me, well, my guy and I are celebrating our 11-year wedding anniversary, so I've got a little bit of drinking to do today. However, I will be back next Sunday with more of my usual bourbon-soaked stories. Until then, I hope you dig this conversation with Fee Waybill. Cheers, y'all.
We have a super special guest. He is the frontman to the band The Tubes. He's a solo artist, and he just put out an amazing album called Fee Waybill Rides Again. We're going to talk a lot about that. We'll talk, some about The Tubes, and this is just a trailblazer in rock and roll. This guy's done so many things, so many credits that we'll talk about it, through the course of the interview as well. And let's not keep him waiting. Let's bring Fee up here. Hey, Fee, how you doing?
Hey, David, Juliette, how are you?
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. And I know David and I have really been looking forward to talking to you.
Well, I'm here. I'm all yours.
Excellent.
That's great. So, we were just mentioning the new record that just came out recently, and that's Fee Waybill Rides Again. It's everything that at least I think that Fee fans need to hear. It's getting amazing reviews. I was, matter of fact, just on Amazon the other day, and it's getting 4.8 out of 5 stars, and that's unheard of on Amazon. So wow. It's doing incredible and even the critics are saying great things about it. How did this project start?
Well, it started, we actually wrote the first song back in 2013. Richard Marx and I are like brothers, okay? We have been best friends for 37 years. He's my mentor, he's my little brother, he's the most talented producer I've ever worked with, he's the best singer I've ever worked with. The guy's incredible. I mean, I tend to sometimes sing sharp in the studio. Richard's perfect all the time. Well, anyway, we met years ago in the studio when we were working with David Foster doing the Tubes Outside Inside album, and Richard just was in town in LA, wanted to meet David, and came to the studio and just sat around in the back of the studio. And at the end of the day, Richard said, I'm a big fan of the Tubes and your lyrics. Would you write a song with me? And, here's an 18-year-old kid from Chicago. And I just kind of went, sure, okay, whatever. And we wrote a song. Our first song was called Who Loves Your Baby, which was the tagline from the Telly Savalas series.
Right.
So that was 83, and we kept writing songs together, and we wrote a big hit for an all-girl band called Vixen.
On the Edge of a Broken Heart. I've always loved that song.
Right. And he writes the music, I write the lyrics. And so when he finally got a deal, he decided he wanted to become an artist and not just write songs for other people. And so he got a deal on Manhattan Records in 1989, and he did his first album and had a big hit. I wrote 3 or 4 songs on the record, had a big hit with Sign It on the Dotted Line. And then Richard got married to a lady named Cynthia Rhodes, who used to be a tubes dancer, by the way.
Wow, small world.
And he actually met her completely separate of the tubes or of me. She had gone on to start acting, and she did, Dirty Dancing and Flash Dance. Well, they got married. They lived in Chicago. They had a baby. Brandon was born in 1990. We used to, and he has 3 sons, Brandon, Lucas, and Jesse, and I'm the godfather to them all. And when the boys were young, we used to, every summer, we used to take a boys-only trip. And we'd get in the car and we'd drive from Chicago up to Minocqua, Wisconsin, where they had a cabin. The family had a cabin. His dad had a cabin. And so we'd spend a week up the cabin with just the boys and go fishing, and we'd go horseback riding, and we'd go go-kart driving, and just have fun. And we had a great time. And we did this for years. Every summer I'd go, and they lived in Lake Forest, which is north of Chicago. And we'd go and we'd drive up and we'd have a great time. And gosh, we did this for probably 10 years in a row. And, and then in 2013, the boys were getting older. Brandon was like, they're in their teens. So we were going to go for the boys' trip, and the boys went, I don't think so.
Too old, too cool, huh?
They wanted to do video games, and Brandon wanted to see his girlfriend, and so forget about Minocqua. And so Richard had a studio there at his house, and so he said, "Well, let's go write a song." And so we went to the studio. We wrote "Faker," the first song on the record.
Great song.
And Richard, and it came out so well. And Richard said, gosh, let's do another solo record. I'd love to do this kind of guitar-driven rock kind of record, and nobody was doing that anymore. And so I said, okay, great, because we had previously worked together in 1996. The solo album I did before that was called "Don't Be Scared by These Hands." And and we hadn't done a record for 10 years, 15 years. And so we started and we did that song. And then during that period, we did 3 other songs. We did Promised Land. That was kind of right around the whole Promised Land was kind of written about the whole freak out with the real estate freak out and the Bernie Madoff freak out and the Amazon being burned up, and I was worried, and so that song's kind of all about that, and we wrote "How Dare You," and we wrote "Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda" during that kind of early period, and then we kind of stopped, and everything kind of went on hold, and from various things happening. I went on tour, he went on tour, our lives all changed.
And then 7 years later, you have this great product.
Years later, during that interim time, one of the songs that we resurrected was "Say Goodbye." And it was a song I wrote for him And he did the track, and he put a vocal on it, and he was going to put it on one of his records, but it never made a record. For some reason, it kept getting shuffled off to the next record. And I kept listening to it on my iTunes, and I told Richard over and over again, I said, Richard, every time I listen to this song, it makes me cry. I got to sing this song. And he goes, well, I'm going to use it on my next record. And I'm, well, okay. So then finally last year, early in the year, we said, let's finish this. Okay. We've got 4 songs. Let's finish it off. And so we started looking for songs to add to the list. And I said, I have to do Say Goodbye.
You're like, it's mine. I want it.
And then another song, Man of the World, was a track that we had both forgotten we wrote. And, I said, Richard, we were looking around for tunes that we had started and never finished. And so he sent me this track. He goes, I don't remember writing this, but I like it. So, and it didn't have a title. It didn't have any lyrics. It didn't have just a melody. And I said, I don't remember it. He goes, I think you wrote it. Okay. Well, so I started looking through my lyric folder on my computer, and I had a number of songs that were never made into a song. And I kept, I put the lyric up on my computer and then listen to the track and see if they somehow, the melody fit the lyrics. And I went again and I couldn't find it. And finally I see this song, Man of the World, and I couldn't even remember it, and it fit perfect. Kind of a very sarcastic song about people who spend their life on their cell phone, posting every random thought.
Which we're all guilty of course.
Right, exactly.
Really. And so,
That's great.
we said, okay, we got to finish this one. And then another one of the songs, Still You on the Inside, was a song that Richard wrote with Chad Kroeger from Nickelback for Daughtry. He and Chad wrote this song and submitted it to Chris Daughtry for one of his records. And he always sends me songs. He always sends me songs he writes, whether they're for me or for him or for whoever. And I've loved that song, and I fell in love with that song, and I kept playing it again and again and again on my computer. And it was a demo with Chad singing the lead vocal. And that guy is amazing. I mean, he is such a great singer.
Strong voice.
Oh, yeah.
One of my all-time favorite rock singers. And so then Richard emails me and goes, well, Daughtry decides he's not going to use it. And I went, what? Are you kidding me?
What is he thinking?
And Richard said, I said, I love that song. I want to do that song. And Richard said, well, it's really high. I said, oh, well, okay. He goes, we had a hard time, Chad and I both. Richard also did it. Richard did the song as a bonus track on one of his records because he loved it too. And, okay, I want to try it. Just let me try it. I can do it. I can sing the end chorus gets really high and it's really a screamer. And so I said, I want to do it. I don't care if I didn't write it. This will be the one song on the record I didn't write, or we didn't write. At least you wrote it. And so we went to the studio and I pulled it off. And I love that. I mean, everybody says, oh man, you should be a country singer. And I went, well, it's kind of a lonesome cowboy kind of album. So this is going to be perfect. Maybe I'll have a country hit.
How good did that feel to pull that off, though? Even when, Richard Marx is telling you, ooh, I don't know, that's a bit high. Yeah.
I know. And I bled from the throat when we were in a little vocal studio here on Melrose in LA. And I knew I could do it all along. I knew because I had sung along with the song 100 times in my room and on the computer, and I knew I could do it. And I was really happy about the way it turned out. And we added that song, and then so we had like 7 songs, and early kind of middle of last year, about a year ago maybe, Richard said, well, let's just do 2 more songs. and we're good. And I said, okay, fine. So he sent me. So the next song we did was "Don't Want to Pull the Trigger," and he sent me this text with him playing an acoustic guitar and saying, I can't really play the lead lick. The lead lick kind of goes like this. And then I went, man, and he had the title "Don't Want to Pull the Trigger." And I said, man, it was one of those songs that, sometimes you write songs from the first line and it's like stream of consciousness, and the first line leads into the second line, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes I write songs where I have a chorus first, an idea or a way a chorus is set up, and I've kind of got to backtrack and figure out what kind of idea leads up to the chorus.
Right. How do you build the story? Right.
Right. And kind of fill out the story and kind of had do the prequel, to the chorus. And I had, it's a song about temptation, and I don't want to pull the trigger, as in I don't want to do this. I don't want to, the sword of temptation slicing my will. And it's about infidelity is what it's about, and the temptation of infidelity. And so we wrote that song, and I think that's probably and my wife, Elizabeth, who was just here a second ago. I mean, that's what the whole thing is about. It's about infidelity, and it's about, and I don't ever want to do that to my wife, ever, even though you have the sword of temptation hanging over you, like Damocles. And
it's such a strong song. When we first heard that one in particular, we thought, man, that's got just such a great 70s rock vibe to it that you do not hear anymore.
I think
it
the
doesn't
whole
exist.
album feels that way. You have 9 tracks on it. They're all solid. There's not filler on this album. It's just great rock and roll, which I feel like the music scene has been lacking.
Well, thank you. I mean, it actually was her idea when I played her the little acoustic intro that Richard texted me. She said, "Oh, yeah, that's so cool. Why don't you use that as the intro to the song and somehow figure out how to make that roll right into the recorded version of the song?" It was Elizabeth's idea. And I told Richard, and I said, "What about I'd never done that before, and he'd never done that before, really. Put the demo as the intro to the song." And he said, "Okay, well, let me talk to Matt. Matt Kroc is a young man from Chicago who mixed and mastered the record, and Richard had worked with him a number of times before. And we called up Matt and said, "Can you figure out how to make this little acoustic text turn into the intro of the recorded portion?" And he did it. And he came back and said, "What do you think?" We went, "Great, do it."
Incredible.
It's solid. Yeah.
It's
solid.
It's kind of a little glimpse into the songwriting process that we thought was really kind of cool of the way we work. And
no doubt, especially when you have people like that have collaborated together, like you and Richard, and the producer. It's always great to have a solid team like that.
Yeah, and there's so many great players who played on this record. I mean, Josh Freese and Matt Scannell from Vertical Horizon, and the last song we did, "Meant to Be Alone," was all Richard's band. It was Jay on guitar and Why Not on bass, and Brian played drums. And we went to and we did those last 2 songs, "Don't Want to Pull the Trigger" and "Meant to Be Alone," at a little studio here in Los Angeles with Richard's band. And actually, we had even before the freak out, we had planned to do a solo show with me and Richard's band. And I have never done a solo show before. I've been with the Tubes my whole life. And I always kind of wanted to do it. And we had it all planned out. Richard was going to go to Europe in March and April and do a big European tour. And then he was going to take the month of May off. And he said, we'll pick a weekend in May and we'll get together with my band and we'll learn your record. And we'll go to there's a little theater in LA here called the Coronet Theater. And I knew the owner, and I'd been there. It's a mostly comedy kind of place, but it's a small proscenium stage theater, about a 280 seater. So it's small and it's perfect. And I went to Mike and I said, would you let me do a gig here if I did Fee Waybill solo gig? And he goes, yeah, sure, no problem. We'll just figure out a date. And so we were thinking May, and we even had the weekend booked where we were going to get together with the band, learn my, second weekend of May, we're going to learn the set, and we're going to, toward the end of the month of May, we're going to go to the theater and do a solo show. And Richard was going to play in the band, and Matt Scannell, and Why Not, and Jay, and Brian. And I was so excited.
What a show that would have been.
And the next week is, the 15th, and the world shuts down. And the whole thing is, and Richard's tour of Europe is canceled, and my show is canceled, and the whole. Anyway,
these are unprecedented times, obviously, and we've talked to a lot of musicians. And matter of fact, we talked to John Anderson, lead singer from Yes, last weekend, and he was telling us all about how it's just changed everything on how they promote his new release, and how they think about even preparing for when they can tour again. How are you going to handle this, differently to promote the album and to think about touring in the future?
Well, the first thing we decided was when we got the whole thing finished, we got finished in like February, and we weren't even thinking about release dates. And Elizabeth came up with that photo for the cover, and we kind of figured out how the art went and what we wanted. It's like, I don't know if you've seen the actual CD or not.
Oh yeah.
It's the 6-panel thing with the horse in the middle and the Mayan pyramid and all of that. We actually Elizabeth and I met at a Mayan pyramid on a solar eclipse.
Really?
In July 11th, 7/11/91. And so that's always been so significant to me. And so we had Prairie Prince, the drummer from the Tubes, put the package together with all of our ideas. And the photo, in fact, it was her idea to not put the title on the cover, just put the picture. She said, when you see an album cover on Amazon or on they always have the title there anyway. You don't need the title to be printed over your face, So
it's a great point.
Yeah.
It's anyway. So we had the thing all ready to go, and then COVID hit, and my manager was going, the music business is closed down. Everybody's closed down. The whole business is in flux. Maybe we shouldn't. And I went, and we talked about it. And I went, I think this is the perfect time because everybody's quarantined. They're sitting at home. They've got nothing to do. They're tired of looking at video games. They want some new music. And I think quite a few people have had the same idea. Bob Dylan just released a 17-minute single, and whatever, John Anderson and Taylor Swift.
So many people. Yeah, the band Kansas just released their album too. A whole bunch of people, and I think just my perception that, and from some of the people that we talked to, that it's like when this all hit, they either had stuff in the works to release, or that this gave them the time to finish it to release it.
Right. I think, and we said the same thing. I said, this is the perfect time to just try to instill a little bit of joy in this horrible time we're going through. And we all agreed. And we went, I want to. maybe there's not a record company that's involved at this point, but we can do it ourselves on social media, and I can print it up myself, find a manufacturer to do it, and let's not wait, let's just do it. And so we did, and I think, I don't know how to answer your question. I don't know how long it's going to be before. I'll tell you one thing. I'm not going to do streaming. I'm not going to do a concert at a drive-in with everybody with a little speaker hanging on your car window in a drive-in. I'm not the tubes, and that's always been the joy of my life, is reaching people in person and seeing the joy in their eye that I was able to provide, and for them to see the joy in my eyes that I have when I'm singing in front of people. And I don't think that works on streaming or virtual concert or sitting at a drive-in watching it on a big screen and you're drinking beer in the tailgate of your pickup.
Just did. I mean, historically, the Tubes have been such exactly. I mean, you guys have been such an art-driven band, such a live-driven band, where you have that connection, like you said, with the audience. I think that would actually be a little bit of a detriment to do it that way.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. A number of people have asked us, "Oh, do a virtual concert," and no, I don't think so. I'm not going to do it. And
now, let me ask you this. How is that different? Because the Tubes has also been a very video-oriented band. So how is this different then?
Well, it's not really. I mean, the Tubes don't want to do it either. I mean, it's that's just not, we started as a live band, and we developed a theatrical presentation that has sustained us for all of these years. And and that's why we have such devoted fans, I think, because people we change it. Every time we go out on tour, we change it. And we do a new show. And like last year in 2019, we did the Completion Backward Principle album. And we did it top to bottom. Talk to You Later was the first song of the set. Usually it's the last song of the set. Right. But we want to do the album in order, and then after that, do the other songs everybody wants to hear: White Punks on Dope, and Mondo Bondage, and What Do You Want from Life, and She's a Beauty. And so I mean, and we did that all last year, and we were continuing. We're going to continue for about another. We had a big tour, a shed tour, this year. We were going to go out with Rick Springfield and do sheds. You know what a shed is, right?
Oh yeah. Yes. The big amphitheaters. Yep.
I think what I think is going to happen. What I think is going to happen is somewhere in the near future, toward the end of the year, they're going to come up with a vaccine, and we're going to figure out how to. In fact, I just read on my NBC News feed that there is a vaccine that they've got that develops the antibodies that will prevent the disease, and also they've been testing it on monkeys, and apparently it does prevent infection. And so if we can come up with that. And there's surety, there's 100%, plan that, or at least I think they said it was going to be 97.4% effective. And we can get the vaccine to people. I think the business will explode. I think people will be so ready if they know that they can be safe, that back to going to see live music. That's what I really hope. And
I hope so too, because one of my friends who's in the music business as well said that even if it gets better, or if they come with a vaccine or whatever, that the rooms are afraid that they're not going to be able to get insured through the promoters, because the insurance companies won't want to underwrite it until 2022. I mean, there's talk of, big concert tours not even happening next year. And that scares me the most.
Oh, I know. I mean, we're with Live Nation, and with our management company, and the Motley Crue, the big stadium tour of this year that was already sold out with Poison and Motley Crue, and I can't remember who else.
It's a lot of money lost.
It is
Gone and already sold out, and Live Nation, is having to refund all that money, and I know they don't want to do that. And
no. Well, I think it really just comes down to us needing to maintain our connections with people, which is why we love doing this, is so that we can share other people's music. And earlier you were talking about your partnership and your friendship with Richard Marx. I kind of want to bring this back around a little bit. You've had some very important connections in your music career, especially with David Foster. Could you talk to us a little bit about what it was like working with him?
Wow, Foz was amazing. We in 1980 or 79 or 80, we were with A&M Records for 5 albums. We signed in 75, and for 5 years we made records for A&M, and we never had a hit. We had maybe a couple of top 40 hits, but nothing serious. I mean, we were a live band, like I said, and our reputation was, we had no trouble selling concert tickets because everybody wanted to see the theatrics and the live show and our productions. But it didn't translate to sales. And, people could go home and, develop their film instead of buying the record.
That's got to be frustrating.
Yeah.
And so it got pretty frustrating for Herb and Jerry at A&M, and they released us. And we went around trying to get another deal with another company, and nobody was interested. And because, they had SoundScan, everybody knew, there was no secrets. Everybody knew how many records you've sold. They knew it. And so we finally got a guy named Bobby Colombi, who used to be the drummer of Blood, Sweat and Tears. Was a guy at Capitol, and he said, I think I've got the guy for you that can change this, that can turn it around for you. And so Capitol signed us in 1980 to a 3-record deal that was contingent upon you selling records. If the first record didn't happen, there was not going to be a second record. And so we met with David Foster, and we were living in San Francisco at the time. And David Foster came up, and he was this kind of unassuming Canadian guy. He had just done Boogie Wonderland and with Earth, Wind and Fire.
Oh, wow.
And just had a #1 song with After the Love Is Gone. And we loved that album. I mean, even though here we are, the San Francisco rock band, everybody was into R&B, and we loved that record. And when they said, we're going to have David Foster come and meet with you guys, we just kind of went, that's great. That's a great idea. And so he met with us, and we just hit it off right away. And that very first session, I remember we had a big warehouse where we kept all our gear, and we had a downstairs studio where we would rehearse so that the neighbors wouldn't hear us, a basement studio. Mm-hmm. And Foz came down, and we started playing songs for him. I think one of the first songs we played with him on the Completion Backward Principle album was a song called Amnesia. And we played the song to him, and he goes, and we had the keyboard down there, and Vince Welnick was our keyboard player. And he goes, well, the song, it doesn't really end. It doesn't really pay off at the end. And so he kind of sat down in front of the keyboard, and we started, okay, well, if you kind of go here and here and here, and then you put in this part, and then everybody kind of went, wow. Wow. And he,
Sorry about that. We just had
They're jet fighters.
jet fighters to go overhead.
Okay. And so then, we kept playing with him, and he said, they're looking at the time, big rock ballads were the thing.
Yes.
And everybody was looking for a big rock ballad like Journey and the big rock ballad that REO Speedwagon had. And we're going, we're not really a big rock ballad kind of band, we're kind of a hard rock band. And but then while we're down there, Vince Welnick, dearly beloved Vince Welnick, who is watching me do this interview at this moment, because I always talk about him when I ask about Don't Want to Wait Anymore. Vince said, well, I kind of have this kind of chord progression that's kind of ballady, and he started playing it for Foz, and David went, there you go, that's it. And he goes, wait, if you modulate here and bring the whole thing up, and then the big ending here, and you pay it off, and there you go. And I had written the lyrics for it, and he goes, there's your rock ballad. There's no problem. So we just, immediately we were sold on David Foster, and even though he's this white,
notoriously difficult to work with.
Yeah, amazing. And we went into the studio with him, and it was amazing. And he is such a detailed perfectionist kind of guy. I remember the first song that I ever sang was Amnesia Again in the studio, and it took me a week to get that lead vocal. I'd sing for 4 hours until my voice was gone, and we'd have half a verse. And it was like, I don't ever know if you ever heard the stories about Mutt Lange, but it's the same kind of thing.
Exactly.
Same thing.
Yeah.
And he made me such a better singer. And then the next song we did, the vocal only took 3 or 4 days, and then it only took 2 days. And then, I became such a better singer for David. And he worked with this guy named Umberto Gatica, a Chilean engineer guy. And the guy was amazing. And he was so fast. And this was, 81. There was no Pro Tools.
Right.
There was no digital fixing anything.
It was analog.
Very linear.
It was all analog. It was all no auto tune.
Right.
You had to sing it right. You couldn't fly the chorus in once you did it right one time.
Yep.
You had to do it all. You couldn't fix it.
There's no fixing it in post.
Right. No fixing. No quantizing, auto tuning, all of that kind of Pro Tools stuff that makes it so much easier to record these days.
So true.
So David was amazing. He was really an incredible guy.
That first song, taking that many days to do, and that hadn't happened to your career before, did that kind of get in your head at all? I could just think, having to do 4 hours, and you get half of a verse, and you're like, oh man,
Yeah, can I even do this?
Yeah. Well, sure. I was not used to that kind of a demanding performance. The album we did before with Todd Rundgren, I really loved Remote Control, but not because of the expertise that was required of me. The way Todd would do background vocals was completely different than the way David Foster. Todd would do 9 tracks of background vocals, 3 guys singing the bottom part, 3 guys singing the middle part, 3 guys singing the top part. And you couldn't really tell if there was a note here or there that wasn't perfect because you had 9 people singing. But when Foz does a background vocal, it's, one guy sings the background part until he gets it perfect. The bottom part. One guy sings the middle part until it's perfect. One guy sings the high part until it's perfect. Then you got 3 guys singing perfect background vocals. And it was it took a long time to do that.
Just tedious.
Sure. Was there?
But the result was undeniable.
Oh, that's the best part.
Absolutely. But was there ever any tension between band members? I mean, it is something of a dramatic change to go from one sort of more art-driven sound to this very, thick produced sound. Did that ever, cause any rips between the guys?
I mean, we had days where, we were in LA recording, and, maybe the night before we went out too long for too much. And
Sure.
in the studio, we're kind of a little bit hungover. And I remember David one time telling the guitar player, he said, your amp sounds like a washing machine. Well, fix it. And well, that's what it always sounds like. Yeah, well, it's not happening. Okay.
Not in this room.
It's it was challenging, and a couple of times, like Randy Jackson played bass on a track.
Oh, that's great.
The bass player, had a hard night, and the next day it was going slowly, and David said, Randy Jackson's down the hallway. Come on, Randy. And it took Randy Jackson like 10 minutes to play it.
Right.
And, I remember toward the end of the recording of Completion Backward Principle, David said, you really, I know the record company wants to release this ballad, but you don't really have a rock song, really a hard rock, a rock chart kind of rock song. And yeah, okay, well, he goes, tomorrow morning, I've got a friend of mine that I worked with in the studio, a studio guitar player who's very, very talented. And why don't you and I and this guy, his name is Steve Lukather.
Oh, geez.
Yep.
Why don't we meet at the studio early in the day? Because I think we were in a studio out in the valley here, and we weren't scheduled to start the session till 4:00. And I think we were working 4 to midnight. And he goes, meet me at 10 o'clock. And so I show up at 10 o'clock with Foster, and Steve comes in at 10 o'clock, and Foz says, we need like a kind of a up-tempo rock song that, for this record. And Steve goes, oh, okay. And so like, it took him 5 minutes, okay, to come up with the Talk to You Later.
Took 5 minutes for Talk to You Later? You gotta be.
Playing the lick for Talk to You Later, and Foz goes, that's what we need right there. There you go. And then, and we did that whole track, and I sat down and started writing lyrics right while they were recording. Lukather played the guitar and the bass, and Foster played the keyboards, and we had Prairie come in a couple of hours. Prairie came in and put the drum track down, and I'm trying to write the lyrics, and the melody, was da 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 da, and I was thinking, what? It's funny because Umberto, the engineer, we had never worked with anybody this brilliant, and he was always doing this really intricate stuff and tricky stuff, and using new outboard gear and all this kind of stuff, and we were always going, well, what does this do? Oh, what does that do? How come why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And Umberto didn't like to explain himself. And so instead of saying, just shut the fuck up. Okay?
Yeah.
Don't bother me, go away, don't bother me. Instead of that, he was nice, and he would say, talk to you later. And that's all he would say, talk to you later. And
I love it.
Genius.
Yeah,
What a great way to come up to
absolutely.
for the lyrics. I mean, for such an iconic song.
See you later. Okay, hold on. I have the title. It's Talk to You Later. And so, and so we get this rough track done, and by the time they show up at 4:00, Foster goes, what do you think of this? We kind of have this rough track, and the band goes, wow, man, well, that's really cool. That's really cool. And so we had our rock song, and
wow.
So working with him was a joy, and I haven't seen it actually. I guess there's a documentary out now.
Yeah, on Netflix.
Yes.
It's an amazing documentary on it. You have to take a look at it because just all his work with Celine Dion and Barbara Streisand. I mean, all the people he's worked
Right.
with.
Yeah.
It's an incredible list, and just all the inspiration that he created. It's amazing that a lot more people don't know who that guy is.
Exactly.
Yeah, the guy's he's a brilliant producer, and I haven't seen it yet. Although someone told me he never mentions the tubes.
He didn't on that either. I'm like, what the hell? Speaking of all of your work recorded, and we didn't really get into a lot of the video discussion, but I know in 2005, Michael Cotton started the Tubes Project, which was basically to digitize all of your reel-to-reel stuff, some of your video stuff.
Right.
And then you fast forward to 2008, and I heard, and tell me if this is true, that a lot of your original stuff was lost in the Universal fire. Is that true?
All of it.
All of it.
All of the tapes. This is only audio stuff. Actually, we had two fires. We had a fire in San Francisco we used to have a warehouse on a little alley called Linden Alley. We had a big warehouse where we would build our sets and paint our props and our studio below it. And right next door to it, Mike lived in a garage right on Linden Alley. And all of the video, he had all the video at his place. And he had a fire, and most all of the video was burned up. And then all of the audio stuff was in a vault at Universal here in LA. And in 2008, that burned up, and they never told us. We didn't ever find out about that until, what was it, a year ago or something? They finally released the information.
The full list, yeah.
Oh, hey, by the way,
all of the band's stuff that was burned up. But Mike's still working on, Mike is still working on that. White Punks on Dope, it's called. And, I've seen quite a number of edits of it, and it's brilliant. And he did a lot of interviews and it's really spectacular. And we've been having trouble finding someone to produce it for us. And because it's going to take a lot of the video was copies. And because, like I said, a lot of the original masters were burned up. And so we're going to have to go out and pay for the masters of a lot of stuff. So it's not going to be cheap to produce. And people, once again, everybody knows how many records you sell. Everybody knows there's no secrets. Right. And so they're saying, well, if we spend all this money on producing this, we're probably not going to make any money back on it. So it's kind of a profit thing, I think. So, which was something that we were interested in because it was about the art for us. And, we would go out and we would just spend, I remember once we had a manager called Ricky Farr, and he was a Welshman. He was the son of Tommy Farr, who was the heavyweight champion of Europe, boxing champion. And he actually fought Joe Louis for the championship of the world at one point. He didn't win, but anyway. Before we went out for the Completion Backward Principle tour, we did this set where everything was tubular, and we had like 10-foot wide, 30-foot high, round scaffolding with a blue curtain hanging over it. We had two of those, and then two 5-foot wide ones in the back. So we had a whole set that was round. Wow. And the scaffolding was round, and the platforms, like the guitar player and the keyboard player and the drummer, were all on round platforms that were on wheels, so you could spin them around and move them all around. And we had the whole thing built in Europe, and because he had some connection there, Ricky did, and shipped to the United States. And there was a place in San Francisco, there still is, called the Palace of Fine Arts, which was a 999-seat theater, but it had a whole complex there where it had rehearsal rooms, and it had a full-size stage, and it had video capability. And so we would go there and we'd rent the place for a month. And we'd have one room where it was dancers. We'd have one room that were for guitar players and working on guitars. We had one room where the equipment was being repaired. And we even had an exercise room where we were practicing our dancing. And then we would do, rehearse on that stage. We had a video guy, and it was really, really nice. And so we set up the huge stage with everything around. And we did a week or 2 weeks of shows at the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco. And then the tour, the Completion Backward tour, the first date is in London. So now we're going to show
no.
in Europe.
You and Spinal Tap.
Yeah, and so we were, before we ever started, we were in over our heads. So,
wow.
but it was never about, it was Mike, Prairie was an artist. Mike was an artist. Prairie was the reason that I ended up being in the band because, I was never in a band. And Roger had a trio in Arizona called the Red, White, and Blues Band. And in 1969, Prairie got a scholarship to the San Francisco Art Institute for a 3-year full ride to the Art Institute. And he wanted to be an artist, and he is brilliant. And so he said, well, we got to move to San Francisco. So the band decided it was a trio, they're going to relocate to San Francisco. And I was working on a cattle ranch in northern Arizona in Cottonwood for a guy named Dave Perkins. I was a hippie cowboy. And I was riding the range, and boy, I've got some stories that
I bet you do.
Do you have any intention of putting these down in a book?
We are working on a book. Elizabeth and I are working on a book, and my mother kept everything. She kept every review, every magazine, every photo. So we have boxes full of stuff that, when my mother died, I went to Scottsdale and I find a whole closet full of this stuff. We brought it all back, and so we're working on it. But yeah, I was pretty sick of being a cowboy, and I was making $50 a month, and with Found, which meant they're putting me up and feeding me. Mm-hmm. And so Roger said, we're going to move to San Francisco. You want to drive the truck with the gear because we don't want to drive. We're flying. I said, okay. So I did. I bailed out of Cottonwood and I drove to San Francisco, and I became the roadie for Roger's band. And
wow, what a start! And then just a few hops later, you're opening up for Iggy Pop, New York Dolls, even Led Zeppelin.
Right.
That had to be crazy for you.
Yeah, it was amazing. We just saw we opened up for Kiss once at Winterland in San Francisco. We opened up for John McLaughlin, the Mahavishnu Orchestra, with Journey. It was Mahavishnu Journey in the Tubes at Winterland, New Year's Eve, 1975. And Winterland was a fabulous, Bill Graham loved us. We actually, Rick and I used to work for Bill Graham at the Fillmore West, sweeping the floor. And because we were just moved to San Francisco, we had no money. And they used to have an audition night. Every Tuesday night at the Fillmore West was audition night. And we talked Bill into letting the Tubes play audition night. And he flipped out. And he loved us, and he would, he promoted us, and he took care of us, and we used to do our own. We would always call him up. We actually used to play softball with the Bill Graham Productions people and a Tube softball team called the Tube Sox.
Of course it was. Why wouldn't it be?
Right. And whenever we would, we used to do our own productions in San Francisco. We did the Mondo Bondage Ball, where every song was bondage, and we did the Streakers Ball. Remember streaking?
Oh yeah.
Oh yes.
Where the poster said, if you come in naked and streak the audience, you get in free.
How did that go over?
Well, once again, everybody in San Francisco, they were not shy. We had a lineup on Columbus Avenue of people standing there naked, ready to go into the theater, streak the theater, and then put their clothes on. And it was amazing. It was really amazing. And your thing, it was cool.
Well, you've obviously, the Tubes are always known for that art performance and bringing that to the forefront. I mean, you were blazing trails then, even before the video stuff, which everyone considers you guys, blazing trails there.
And I mean, you were working with Kenny Ortega as your choreographer. Tell me about him.
Yeah, Kenny. I mean, I was going to. I try to never. Kenny Ortega was, when we met him in the early 70s. Kenny was a dancer on a regional production of Jesus Christ Superstar. And he had just come off the road with this play, and he wanted to be a choreographer. And he saw us do this little club in San Francisco. And, and we're trying to do, I'm trying to do Quaalude, and I'm trying to do characters and different kind of costume stuff. And Kenny saw us and said, I could really kind of clean this stuff up for you, and choreograph some stuff. And we went, oh, okay, great. And so we started working with him early on. And I mean, we worked with Kenny. He put all of our shows together from like our first tour of 1975 till like one of the last big tours was 87, I believe. So he worked with us for 12, 14 years. And he's just a brilliant guy. He's so great. And it's funny because he put a show together for us. We were trying to get a deal before we ever got our first record deal in 74 or something like that. We were sending cassettes, audio cassettes around to various record companies, and no luck, no response. And so Kenny suggested that we do a video of the show and send a video out, like an old VHS or Beta or something video.
No one was doing that then.
No.
Yeah, and we did. We did a video of Quaalude singing White Punks on Dope, and we played it to A&M Records, and they went, oh, okay, cool. And they sent a guy, they sent a guy up to San Francisco to see a show, and we got a deal with A&M based on
That's incredible.
That is incredible.
And Kenny was so brilliant. I mean, he's still brilliant. I mean, and once again, his whole world has shut down. He was doing a movie for Netflix or something in Canada, and that got shut down. And he
did Dirty Dancing. He's worked with Michael Jackson, was that the connection with you and Xanadu? Is him?
Yeah, we got Xanadu, the gig in Xanadu, because Kenny was the choreographer. And
makes sense.
Yeah, he was the choreographer. And, I just did an interview this is 40 years this month since the release of Xanadu.
Oh my God.
It's hard to even believe.
August of 1980, Xanadu came out.
Unbelievable.
And Kenny put that whole thing together with us, doing that song, Got Some Dancing to Do, and the kind of Andrews Sisters 40s song that all merged together into the stages came together and all fit together, and the music came together, and both songs were melded together, and it was all Kenny. And he was doing, I'm sure he was doing the Michael Jackson tour or production when he died.
Yes.
He just got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame last summer. We went to the presentation. He got a star on the Walk of Fame right in Hollywood, which was
that's awesome. I love it.
When are we going to see the tubes on there?
Right.
Good question.
We're going to start a writing letter campaign exactly.
People got time on their hands.
Well,
They'll make it
I
happen.
tell you, there's tons of people in the chat here since we're doing this live feed, and they're just sending you just tons of love, and they're so excited to have you on, as are we, to be able to talk to you today. And I want to bring this full circle because everyone in the chat, anyone who sees this live and on demand on YouTube, you have to go pick up Fee Waybill's Rides Again, because I mean, it is such a strong release, and I know Fee's probably embarrassed that we're saying all this stuff about it, but I mean, we've been playing it, literally nonstop through the house. It is incredible. So everyone out in the chat, go pick up that release. You can get it. It's available everywhere.
Well, thank you. Actually, we're working on some lyric videos for YouTube. So very soon, we're going to put up some lyric. I know right now they just have the videos with just my picture on it with nothing happening. But I've got a social media friend of mine who's putting that together for us, and we're going to put up lyric videos so you can see the lyrics. Follow the bouncing ball.
Right. That's perfect.
I love it.
That's perfect. Fee, best of luck to you, Fee, and thank you so much for being on. We hope to talk to you soon, and when you do write that book, we want to talk to you about that as well.
Okay. David, Andrea, thank you for having me very much. I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Take care.
Take care.
You too. Stay safe.
You too.
Cheers.
Go to theunwritablерant.com and sign up to get early access to interviews and new videos. And don't forget to connect with Juliette on Twitter @MorningNeurosis.
Girl, you as pretty as a Sunday morning, standing on the corner at Carondelet. What you say we make our way up to Bourbon, a couple hurricanes and a hand grenade, and get blown away. Let the chips fall where they may. If it's all the same, what you say, bon ton. Hey, pretty mama, I can smell the gumbo. Sweetest taste of honeysuckle on my lips. Good God Almighty, I can hear the trombone. Every heart ought to beat to a rhythm like this. Come a little closer, honey, let me hold you. Nothing tastes better than a bourbon kiss. You can be the flower on my magnolia. Every heart ought to beat to a rhythm like this.